We're only 2 days into 2026, but possible contenders for a 2028 presidential run are already laying the groundwork for their campaigns. Primaries won't start for about 2 years, but one expert tells MS Now's Akayla Gardner that if potential candidates are smart, they're already in a mad rush behind the scenes. It's ahead of what will be a crucial test of their political appeal, their ability to raise money, and their skill at navigating their respective parties' anxieties and ambitions. Adrienne Elrod is back, and joining me here in studio is the author of that new reporting, MS Now's Akayla Gardner, and Lindsey Drath, CEO of the Forward Party, who served as regional finance director for Mitt Romney's presidential campaign and director of the RNC's National Finance Committee. Akayla, to you first, because you have this new great reporting. Tell us more about this mad rush taking place behind the scenes.
This is why 2026 is so important. This is really the last full calendar year that we're going to see before people start announcing that they want to run for president in 2027. And this year, they're going to be courting donors, allies, voters. They're going to be trying to build their name ID. Someone who's done that pretty effectively, I would say, is California Governor Gavin Newsom, who's really shot to the top of most polling for hypothetical candidates. You've also seen Wes Moore follow in his footsteps to launch a redistricting effort in Maryland. J.B. Pritzker has also been someone who's really been on the attack for President Trump. But there is a set, particularly of Democrats, who have a really delicate dance to navigate because they're running for re-election this year. And if you want to run for president, you probably need to win your re-election campaign. And that includes Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who is in a key battleground state. You have Tim Walz in Minnesota, also more. But Democrats are really thinking very strategically about 2028. They want to win. They're thinking about the kinds of nominees who can do that. There is some anxiety about potentially Vice President Harris running again and whether she could win potentially in 2028. But on the Republican side, it's a little bit less exciting. J.D. Vance is pretty much considered the clear front runner there. It's still very early, but most people think that if he wants a nomination, it's his.
And he's trying to consolidate support already, of course. Lindsey, how focused do these potential candidates have to be on fundraising this far out? When is it too early, essentially, to get started with this?
Akayla referenced the importance of kind of consolidating this race for talent, and you mentioned my role at the RNC. So I was there during the 2010 cycle, watching what was happening 2 years out from the 2012 cycle, prior to going on to the Romney campaign. Lots of jockeying for talent. But I harken back to my having been at the RNC in 2010. It's 2026. We're here on January 2nd, and it's not working. This decided jockeying within the two-party system is not working. 30% of Americans right now are unhappy with our two-party system. And what we're talking about is an analysis of jockeying within the Democratic Party primaries and the Republican Party primaries. You have voters leaving that two-party system at unprecedented levels. In fact, 10,000 voters a day are re-registering as independents or as members of third parties. So you mentioned Governor Wes Moore or Governor Josh Shapiro, some of these really all-star, kind of rising leaders in the Democratic Party. They're both governors of states that have closed party primaries with upwards of a third of their voters actually not even registered, which means the folks that you're seeing come out of the 2026 election cycles are going to be appealing to a very small swath of the electorate within their parties. So you're going to see folks in the Democratic Party running to the left to appeal to a more progressive, active, population within the Democratic Party. You're going to see Republican candidates tacking to the right to appeal to these closed party primary voters. It's not where the American voters are in 2026, and I think that our focus really needs to be on structural changes and how the system is not serving voters, as opposed to replaying the same thing that we've seen cycle after cycle.
But we have seen independent candidates run before, and none of them are able to garner the support that they need by voters to actually win. Adrienne, on the Democratic side, as Lindsey and Akayla were mentioning, there's a lot of governors. Governor Gavin Newsom of California, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, both have memoirs set to release next month. Well, Kamala Harris, the former vice president, is continuing her book tour, and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez delivered a major speech at New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani's inauguration. Is there anyone else that we should be thinking about beyond those that you just saw on the screen, beyond the ones that Akayla and Lindsey mentioned?
Yeah, look, I mean, Laura, I think we have a really good shot of having probably 25 or 30 people running in the Democratic primary going into 27 and going to 2028. And that's exactly what I think should happen. I think we need to show voters what we're all about, that we are a big tent party with big ideas, and we actually have the ability to get things done. You mentioned Governor Newsom and Governor Shapiro both having books coming out. Both of them are traveling a lot, hitting some of the early states. That's very smart. I mean, this is the time that people should start laying the groundwork. Now, you want to make sure if you are running in 2028 for president that you don't announce before the 2026 midterms, because it's very important to go out there, campaign for candidates, make sure that Democrats at the very least take back the House, maybe flip some governor seats, even possibly take back the Senate. And then right after the midterms take place is when I think you start seeing a lot of people announcing. It's incredibly smart. I think we have a big tent party. I also think that this time around, whereas in 2020, Democratic voters and just voted the electorate across the board, was looking for stability back in the White House after 4 years of chaos under Donald Trump. And they elected somebody in Joe Biden who had stature, who was a moderate, who had served in the White House before, who had spent his entire career in the United States Senate. I think going into 2028, voters want a fighter. And a lot of the names that you mentioned on that screen, while some of them have different policies and different ways of accomplishing their goals, they are all known as fighters. So it's going to be very interesting. I, for one, am very excited to see who jumps into the ring in 27. I think it's going to be a robust primary, and I'm excited for it.
That's also what I hear from a lot of Democratic-leaning voters, which is that they want someone who is going to throw a punch, not just an elder statesman, which is what they wanted the last go-around. But, Akayla, on the Republican side, one Trump-aligned strategist told you that it's Vice President J.D. Vance's race to win or lose. But other Republicans are positioning themselves, including Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who the GOP strategist that you were talking to says is as ambitious as they come. I don't think he's going to look at J.D. Vance and be intimidated. Is Ted Cruz the greatest threat to J.D. Vance, or are there others out there that could be a bigger threat?
I mean, who's to say? But Ted Cruz has been somebody who has positioned himself as an ally of the president, but yet he's taken very strategic shots. He particularly has criticized President Trump over tariffs. And I think the economy is going to be a huge weakness for Vance. He's going to be traveling this year, talking about the economy across the country, campaigning for congressional Republicans. And some of the same issues that they criticized Joe Biden and Vice President Harris about is the same ones that they're facing now. They own this economy now, and voters are going to be voting on that in the midterms and come 2028. And they're really up against this pressure to change voters' sentiments about the economy, which right now continue to be very downbeat.
Yeah, it sounds like even though some key figures across the conservative movement want J.D. Vance or are coalescing behind him, there are others that aren't necessarily sold on it yet. Adrian, Akayla also reports that one DNC member who requested anonymity acknowledged, quote, some anxiety about the type of nominee the party will select following losses to Trump by two women in 2016 and 2024. Quote, I definitely see and feel the pushback a lot, which is people being like, Kamala is still incredibly popular. Let's not write her off. But I also hear from people that say, I can't live through another rejection of a woman candidate. How much do you think voters are thinking about that? Do they want someone like Harris to come back or not?
Look, I think voters, again, want someone who's going to fight for them, who's going to talk about the issues that matter to their families that they're facing. Affordability, of course, being the #1 issue in the economy, which is exactly why, as Akayla mentioned, J.D. Vance is going to have a really hard time because Trump has shown that he's not focused on fighting for the American people, making prices lower for them. He's focused on catering